Hello, good afternoon, everybody. I'm trying to share the screen, but can somebody make me the host, please? Okay, thank you. So I hope all of you are safe and doing good. So now we are getting into our second session. Here we'll be studying, as per syllabus, we only have two more units to complete. So the next unit which we will look after is bill of lading. So what is bill of lading? And once we complete this unit, bill of lading, what is that we will understand from this unit? And what kind of questions can you expect? So once we complete this session, the main objective of this bill of lading session is that you should know the various functions of bill of lading. You should basically know what is bill of lading. That is, of course, we will know once we get into it. You should know what are the various functions which is involved in this bill of lading. Okay, and what are the salient features of bill of lading, and what are the types of bill of lading, okay, and what is multimodal transport operators and legislation pertaining to multimodal transport in India. So all these are key objectives or takeaways we will have to observe in this particular unit. So now let's go into the subject. So I am sure most of you would have been aware that this bill of lading, each of you would have seen once in a while at least. If you have ordered something or if you have couriered something, anything is being transported from one point to another, you would have seen a lot of documents being signed and filled up. Why is that? Basically, why are we signing all this document and what does this mean to us? So when you are particularly sending a particular item from one point to another point, on last session I was explaining you that you are sending a gift to somebody else. One of your friend in Bombay from Chennai, you're sending something. So what is that proof that you are sending, and what is the documentation things which is involved while sending, which was all discussed in our last session. So now let's get into this subject called bill of lading. Okay. So bill of lading is a type of document that is used to acknowledge the receipt of a shipment of goods and is an essential document in transporting the goods. So what do you mean by acknowledgement of receipt? So acknowledgement of receipt means somebody is accepting that so and so things have happened. Correct? So bill of lading means it's a valid proof. Somebody is acknowledging the receipt that shipment of goods is happening. Okay? And this is very essential document when you are transporting a goods from one point to another. So in addition to acknowledgement, the receipt of goods, okay, a bill of lading indicates that a particular vessel on which the goods have been placed, their intended destination, and the terms of transporting the shipment to its final destination. So what does this bill of lading consist? The bill of lading will consist in acknowledgement. Point one, that is that so and so thing is moving from, I acknowledge that I accept that so and so thing is moving. Okay. What are the other additional things will be we can see in bill of lading? We can see a bill of lading indicates that a particular vessel, on which particular vessel is this shipment moving. Okay, is it an air freight or is it moving in a sea? Is it moving is it on a road transport? Or if it is going on a road transport, on which particular vehicle is this moving? Now most of you, when you get your online orders now, I'm sure everybody would have ordered in Flipkart or Amazon, whichever online thing. So when you are ordering something, within 2 days you're getting the details of who is delivering this item with the particular phone number of the person who is getting it, and some companies even share the particular vehicle number also, which is pertinent. So what does this mean? Where is this coming from? This all details will be indicated in bill of lading. Okay. So the bill of lading, they're intended to destination. Now, which destination is it going to? Which is the final destination? Now, if you are given Bombay as an address, that will be your final destination. So this all are involved in bill of lading. And again, you will have to mention what kind of transportation is it? Air? Is it sea? What type of transport? Are you doing a road transport? So all this has to be mentioned in it and towards final destination, which is your final destination. All this has to be in your bill of lading. Okay. Now it is a document of title of goods entrusted and can be transferred from one person to another by endorsement and delivery. Okay, this unit gives, here we will basically study the details about bills of lading and its types. There are many types of bills that also we will study in this. Now, freight forwards and multimodal transport operators, that also we will be studying in this unit. What is freight forwarders? Are non-vessels operating carriers who are not actual carriers in the real sense of the term, but they enter into first contract with their shipper, undertaking to carry their consignment and in turn consolidate and hand over sealed containers with the cargo. To line operators and feeder operators, to exportation and importation, a multi-modal operator is a person who is engaged in the business of transporting goods for hire. Okay, and the mode of transport shall include only such carriage involved road, rail, inland, waterways, or sea. Okay, the multi-modal transportation involves carry of means or mode of transport from the acceptance of goods in India to a place of delivery goods outside India. Okay, so now we are going through what is multimodal transportation. Now we studied what definition of multimodal transportation here, and here we have studied what is freight forwarders. So we will get into this both topics in detail in the following slides. So again, let's see what is a bill of lading. Okay, so bill of lading is a legal document. Again, as I said, it's a legal document. You should note this point. It is not just a paper or piece or something. It is a legally abided. It is a legal document issued by a carrier to a shipper. Okay, from a carrier, to a shipper, that details the type, okay, quantity, destination, goods being carried. Okay, a bill of lading also serves as a shipment receipt. Okay, we studied what is receipt in our previous session. If you recollect, you should be knowing what is receipt now by now. Okay, when the carrier delivers the goods at predominantly destination, when the particular destination is given, okay, the document must accompany the shipped products, no matter the form of transportation, and must be signed by an authorized representative from the carrier, shipper, and receiver. Okay, the documentation must accompany the shipped product. What are the shipped product? That document must have it, and no matter the form of transportation, it can be air, road, sea, and must have signed by authorized representative carrier by shipper and receiver. Now, what are the key takeaways of this book? A bill of lading is a legal document issued by a carrier to shipper, which we discussed. Okay. Now, a bill of lading is a document of title, a receipt for a shipped goods. That's basically a receipt, and a contract between the carrier and the shipper. Okay, it's a contract between the carrier and the shipper. Now, this document must accompany the shipped goods, as we discussed, must have signed by an authorized representative from the carrier, shipper, and so the three people also have is involved in this. If managed and reviewed properly, a bill of lading can help to prevent asset theft. Now, this is basically assessing that. Now, when you are sending so and so items, you will mention what are the quantity of items involved in it in a particular cargo. So you will know how many items you're sending. Now, for example, if you're sending say 100 bikes from one point to other point in a big cargo vessel, now this 100 bikes, when it receives, the shipper is telling, okay, there is 100 bikes. Okay. Now the carrier who is taking it also acknowledges. He is also authorized representative saying that, signing that, okay, there is 100 bikes there. Now the receiver is also saying, once he receives, he will also check and say that there is 100 bikes. So that the transparency is there. Okay. Bill of lading is also known as a transparency between three carriers. Now carrier, shipper and receiver will have a easy transparency there, so that no theft is happening. Now in between, if carrier is sending 100 bikes, in between the shipper can do anything if he wants to, right? He can flip two bikes and say there is only, I got only 98 bikes, but he cannot do that because he has already signed saying he has received 100 bikes. Now the receiver, after receiving this 100 bikes, he can also say, no, no, there is only a 95, there is 5 bikes missing, but he cannot say that once he signed this. Okay, so he is also accepting here. So that is why bill of lading is very important. Yeah? So understanding bill of lading. The bill of lading is a legally bounded document, as I say initially said. Now, okay. So now let you take an example on a logistics company, which intends to transport via heavy truck. Okay, say for example, gasoline. Now gas from a plant from Texas to a gas station in Arizona. Okay. Now a plant representative and the driver signed the bill of lading after loading the gas on a truck. Okay. Now he's a shipper. Okay, who is a shipper? So once the carrier delivers the fuel to the gas station in Arizona, the truck driver requests that the station clerk also sign the document. Okay. So every business needs to have an internal control. This is also part of internal audit also, because everybody does these checks here. So in place to prevent that. So one key component of internal control is where prevents the employee from having too much of control within the business. Now, no two internal control systems are the same. Okay. However, most follow a standard or a core philosophies that have become standard management practice. The implementation of internal controls can also help streamline operations and prevent fraud. A bill of lading is one of several key documents that must be properly managed, reviewed to prevent assets theft. So the main purpose of it is that no theft, cross check or internal control is being checked in using bill of lading. So let's take another example now. Say if XYZ, okay, a fine dining receives shipment for a fresh meat, and 5 times a week. Now this is a dining hotel, restaurant or something. A shipment of fresh meat is received 5 times a week. The restaurant manager determines that the type and amount of meat and fish the restaurant needs to order. So he then fills out a purchase order or a PO, and this XYZ owner receives and initials a PO before it is emailed to the food vendor. So the vendor gathers the meat and fish and signs a bill of lading along with a representative from the overnight carrier. Okay. So next, the carrier delivers the food to the restaurant. Now the manager compares the information of the bill of lading to what was requested in the PO. Okay. So if the information matches, the PO and the bill of lading are sent to the owner, who reviews, okay, the documents and writes a check payable to the footer. Okay, so this is the cycle. So a PO is restaurant want to meet, so he will order, so he will check, this PO is checked. Now his carrier is opposite fellow also is checking, he's also signing. Now he'll compare the bill of lading. Once he's received the consignment, now he gives to his boss, so he will again review what it is. The order is given so and so number, we received so and so number, then he will do the payment. Okay. So in this example, what happened? The owner does not issue a check to the vendor without seeing the purchase order and bill of lading. So here the purchase order is also seen and bill of order. That means he is comparing. So he is making sure that there is no fraud happening in his company. Okay. So this step ensures this XYZ only pays for what in order and what it is received. So if the documents do not match and the restaurant manager compares them, the manager will ask the vendor about the exception. How come where is one item is missing? So he can ask. Okay. So third employee reconciles the bank statement and makes company deposit. So all the steps must be in a place to prevent theft. Okay, so I hope this is clear now. This is a very simple logic. You can use it. Why? What is the use of bill of lading? Okay, so here if you see a carrier, a transporter is there, a shipper is there. Okay, a consignee is there, buyer. There are three parties involved in this. Okay, so this is one sample of a bill of lading. So this is a ocean transport this thing, or a multi-modal transport bill of lading document. This is. So here, if you can see, what are the details in bill of lading? If you can see, observe here, you can see that the company name, the transportation company name, is mentioned here. Okay, the shipper's name is mentioned here, the consignee name is mentioned here, so everything is transparent. So this one document is enough for you to understand who is sending, with whom is he sending, and who is getting it. Okay, and the place where the goods were loaded, that is also mentioned here, and where this the consignment is going, the destination, that also is mentioned. Transportation is mentioned. What kind of transportation? Is it road, rail, or sea? This is a sea. Okay, if you see the container set contains 275 bags of 70 kg net. Okay, Bolivia washed Arabica coffee. Okay, that is the material. Okay, Corp 2007 with the invoice number. Okay, if you see that bill of lading document here, you can see all the details with the price, how many kgs, everything is there. So in this 1 gram is missing, we can say no, I did not receive it. So where is it loading? It is loading from Africa. Okay, so you can see all the details in bill of lading here. So the terms of shipment. So again, so transportation mode, the terms of shipment. So what is the terms of shipment? Inco terms. Remember, we studied what is Inco terms last session. So that is also mentioned here. What is the terms of shipment which is done? So and so. If insurance is taken, who is responsible for so and so things? If some damage is happening, who is responsible? So all these terms will be mentioned here, and description of goods being carried, which particular color, so and so, what is the height of this, or so and so. All the description of the goods will be here, including the weight, dimension, classification, everything will be mentioned in this bill of lading. Okay. So a bill of lading also covers its role as a title to goods. Okay. So once the goods have arrived to a destination, the bill of lading acts as a title to the goods. Well, the consignee listed will need to present the bill of lading in order to secure the release of shipment by carrier and claim the ownership. In this sense, it is an evidence of confirmation of delivery. This we explained it already. Okay. So only the consignee listed on the bill of lading has the contractual right to request for the release of the cargo. So anybody else can't go and take the cargo. Correct. So only the consignee listed can go and show his Aadhaar card or PAN card. Now in India they ask for your proof. So if you are getting a, they'll ask, are you really this person? Show me your valid proof. That person only can go and collect the cargo. So bills of lading also make sure that the shipper is paid. In some cases, what happens? The shipper can hold the original bill until they receive the payment. Okay. So by doing this, the consignee is unable to access their goods until the payment has been made, and the bill of lading is released only once the payment is made. So here, both the shipper also can have the control of it. Okay. So who uses a bill of lading now? Okay. So usually, the companies that sell transportation service that generates bills of lading. So they can include owner, say drivers, freight forwarders, okay, like the steamship clients, third party logistic companies, and others. So they include companies transporting from any means. It can be shipping, it can be through air, it can be freight forwarders, it can be rail, road, anything. Okay, so they can be used for both domestic and international deliveries. Okay. So now let's see what is the process of bill of lading. How does this happen? Now, when if you are, what are the process involved here? So the bills of ladings are normally provided to the shipper. Okay? So here, what happens? There is a consignee importer. Okay, contracts freight forward to arrange a freight. Okay, so then he consignee goes and approaches a freight forwarder. Okay, so now, so who are these freight forwarders? There are a lot of companies. So you can Google and find out there is a lot of freight forwarding companies. Okay, so this contract is overseas agent of the country and of the origin country. So what happens is freight forwarder will reach the overseas agent. Now, which country does this destination go? So he will go and contact. Now, being a customer, I don't know whom can. Now I want to send something to Africa in Kenya, okay, and I don't know whom to contact in Kenya. But this freight forwarder has his agent there, so he will contact them, and the overseas agent liaises with the supplier to ship the goods. Okay. Now what happens? This supplier in that particular area will again make create a bill of lading is created and is sent to the is ready and sent. Now the freight forwarder, what will you do? Kansai receives the documents from the supplier and receives the bill of lading from the overseas agent. Then the customs broker comes. So now say does now this is here it's an Australian customs, okay, in this picture. So the customs broker will come and clear the documents provided by the freight forwarder to check all the order or not. From there it goes to the freight forwarder. So what freight forwarder does, he will invoice to buyer, so and so, because he has done all his process, right? So he will create an invoice. Then the goods are already cleared and paid, and the final delivery happens. This is one side of bill of process. This is import. When you are trying to do an import, when you want to get something from Africa to India or from any other point, foreign country to your place, this is the process of import of bill of lading. Okay. So here a broker, freight forward, third party, managing customs, can say the third party who purchase the goods. Okay, all these are involved when you are doing an import. So what happens when you are exporting? Okay, if you want to export, now you have a factory in Coimbatore, you are exporting your clothes to some other place. Okay, so what happens? So here a consignor, okay, the supplier receives the order from overseas client. Your merchant, somebody from other countries giving you an order. Then you contact your freight forwarder. Okay. Then again the consignor is he will contact the consignor supplier providing documents of goods so and so is being supposed to send. Okay. The freight forwarder arranges transport with the cartage companies, documents with the customs and brokers for export. So the cartage company is involved now. So goods are sent from origin to the port. Okay. Now say from Tirunelveli port something is going, or Chennai port. Okay, they'll reach the items is reached from Coimbatore to Chennai port. The item is reached. Okay, and from there the delivered to the port. So goods are being exported. From that point, it is being moved. Okay. From that, the foreign nation it is reaching freight forwarder there. He sends the documents to the designated agent there, and the country of destination agent will do the import process and starts the destination through the local agent. So they will do the local process in the foreign country to receive this item there. So this is bill of lading process when the export happens. Okay. So bill of lading as evidence of terms of contract. So we came through this point when we were discussing the whole process of it. So this is an evidence. Okay. So what is an evidence? Evidence is something which is proving something. Correct. So how is bill of lading acting as an evidence? What is contract? We studied in the last session. Okay. So this is an evidence of terms of contract. Okay. So the contract of assignment is executed between the ship owner and the shipper to issuance of the bill of lading, and the bill of lading thereafter is no contract itself to goods of evidence and of terms of contract. So these terms can also be ascertained from charter party if any or the maid's receipt or any other such documents like freight notice advice, notes, undertaking or warranties by an agent carrier. The terms of bill of lading govern contractually obligations between the ship owner and the shipper. Okay. So which varies or contradicts. So if there is any contradiction, you will able to point it out. So you will understand where there is a contradiction, or it's a conclusive evidence also when you are making a bill of lading. Okay. So the bill of lading in charter parties are with a number of clauses expressing the terms and conditions. So, on account of this, the relatively stronger opposition of ship owner, clauses are often inserted in those documents which place a receivers of the cargo sometime at a disadvantage, because he is the one who decides the clause. Okay, so it can be a disadvantage sometimes for a receiver. So the court of law, when called to seek judgment in respect of cases assigning arising from such contracts, are often reluctant to interfere with the term agreed between the patrons. So as we evidence of decision of House Lords Incorporation of Panama case 1957, there was a case, you can Google that. We'll not discuss about it, this is a big one. So now the Bill of Lading contain many protective and exception clauses which secure the position of carrier, okay, via the cargo owner consisting liability. The detention or substitution of vessel, transshipment, forwarding multimodal deal, government direction, times clauses, strike, etc. have been attribution clauses. Some of the terms which may be regarded as prejudicial to the interest of cargo owner. Okay. So now let's see what is the salient features of bill of lading. Okay. So we went through the few samples of the bill of lading earlier. So now we can see what is in detail of it. So when a shipper of the cargo is legally obliged to provide a correct, accurate description, now you can't say that accurate description. You cannot say that you are sending, say, 500 kilos of flowers, but you cannot mention that you are sending 500 kilos of cotton in it. It has to be very accurate. So it is endorsed in bill of lading, and the carrier does not verify veracity and contains description of cargo and other factors. So the silent features are the name of shipper. We discussed this. Name of the vessel. So accurate and full description of the cargo. Port of shipment. Port of discharge. Full details of freight, including when and where it may be paid, or whether it is payable in advance, or is it prepaid, or the customer will pay once he receive it. Full name of the consignee, or which warehouse it is coming from. A number of bill lading is important. At the same time, the signed by master of vessel of his agent acknowledge whether the receipt of goods, actual date of signature, everything. Okay, all these are silent features of bill of lading. There are many clauses now in this bill of lading. Okay, so let's see what are the different type of clauses in bill of lading. Okay, so the first one is the clause paramount. Okay, so in Hodge rules, which we studied, Hodge rules, okay, or the Hamburg rules, which we discussed in the last session, okay, may be incorporated within the terms of bill of lading. That can be added here. So even if the applicability of the said rules is not specifically admitted, the law prevailing at the port of shipment or discharge would apply the relevant law in respect of disputes arising out of bill of lading issued for a carrier. So if the bill of lading is issued in, you say, United Kingdom or India, the applicable clause paramount would be Hodge-Wixby rules. So the United States of America could be Hamburg rules as adopted by the Cox Act. Okay, we studied what is Cox Act, Carrier of Goods by Sea Act. Okay, so however, if the same is not specifically applied and incorporated, the same may not be applicable to charter parties. Where the bill of lading is contained in the charter party will not be covered by Hogg and Wixby rules unless this are specifically incorporated into the bill of lading. So that's why it is mentioned that every time the clause is important, and you should mention what is particularly covered, or particularly we have to incorporate such things in the bill of lading. Otherwise, you will lose some of the claims. So what is alien clause? Next we'll see what is the alien clause. So this clause entitles the right of lien on cargo shipped by the ship owner. So in certain circumstances related to non-payment of freight, this land is a contractual lien, is also known as a freight land. Okay. So next is voyage clause. So this clause allows the vessel to sail with or without pilots or tugs, or to tow or to be towed, and to call at any port in order to both on and off the advertised route, and to carry certain goods on deck with respect to the application of Hogg-Wixby rules. Okay, that is voyage clause. So next, the goods live animals goods are carried on deck. That is which is excluded, which we cannot in this Hogg-Wixby rule. You cannot carry live animals and goods which cannot be carried on deck, which is in Article 1. Okay, so from the definition of goods to which the rules apply. So in respect of cargo carried on deck, however, the exclusion is only effective where the cargo of carriage is specially specifically states that the goods are carried. Okay, next is freight clause. So what is freight clause? This clause highlights the payment of the freight for the carriage under the bill of lading. Now, this endorsement may be freight to prepaid or freight to collect or freight arranged. Okay, this freight part paid, freight part to collect, etc. are comes under the freight clause. Okay, then we have something called general average clause. So the bill of lading will be the state fact of that. If general average is to be arrived, then possibly by the or can rules 1974 would be applicable. Okay. Then we have salvage clause. So what is salvage clause? This is said to apply that circumstance when it may be necessary to salve a vessel, okay, will be stipulated with the salvage award. Should also be paid in circumstances where there is a sister ship salvage. Okay, what is salvage? We will discuss in detail on our next slides. Transshipment clause. So the same relates to the circumstance where a cargo must be transshipped and allows the ship owner to undertake a voyage in this way, and this means enabling the ship owner to be absorbing full responsibility once the goods have left his vessel. So even though he has undergone the terms of bill of lading undertaken to carry the goods until the final destination. Okay, so these are few cases which you can go through of bill of lading. These cases were all involved bill of lading, which you can that's in your syllabus. It's better you go through it. Okay, so next is format of lading in the bill. Okay, so what is the format of lading in the face of the bill? Okay, so the name and address of the shipper, okay, or agent acting on his behalf. If the agent is employed, it should be indicated as such that to avoid the acceptance of the full legal responsibility as a principle. So this have to be mentioned. So this is a format. Okay. Next, you have to mention the name, address of the consignee or the made out to order of the shipper if also required. Okay. So an order bill must be endorsed. So what is order bill? Order bill is something which is and which has the manifest of it. What are the items being ordered? Okay, and shipper before dispatch to the consignee. So it also desirable to indicate the telex number, the telephone number of the party to notify the party if possible. Okay, to assist the notification on arrival at the destination. So he need to mention his phone contact details. The requirement to notify is not, however, obligatory, and this is usually emphasized in the clause of bill, it being assumed that other advices would be available to the party who is purchasing goods. But when a bill has been made out to order, it is desirable to complete the notified party box. Okay, as this should help the prompt clearance and delivery of the goods. An order bill is negotiable document when endorsed. Okay. Next, we will have when a throw bill is required, either from an inland collection point to port of destination or the port of loading to an inland destination overseas, or right through from the inland points, then the pre-carriage box should be shown, and this method is being applied. Okay. So next is the place of acceptance. So the port of loading and discharge also requires at an inland destination abroad, assuming that the carrier can offer suitable facility at the name of final place of delivery. Sometimes the word intended appears like received or shipment bill. Cargo collected while from the decks of docks or loading terminal may be subject to schedule changes or operational reason after the bill has been issued. So the document may be amended and the word intended deleted after shipment has been taken place, but this does not necessarily apply to the port of discharge. It is important that this information is completed and correct as it forms part of contract of carriage. Okay? So next is the name of the carrying vessel it has to be shown in the bill of lading. This is one aspect that may be changed to the name of substitutional ship, which is operational. So when there is an operational difficulties arise, the carrier has the liberty to do this also. Okay. uh, they can change the name. If there is this particular vessel is not available and something else is available, they can change it. So on some received of for the shipment through the bills of care combines transport documents, the words intended vessel may be shown. This is because cargo may be received either on a house basis or consolidated at an inland depot where the bill is being issued. So by the time the goods arrive the loading terminal, it is possible that the sailing schedule may have changed, although the intention to ship on named vessel remains the same. But such wordings on this type of document is recommended by P&I associations. Okay. So the word intended can be deleted when loading has taken place. This conforms to letter of credit requirements. Okay? So the next is the details that follow, such as marks and numbers of the goods to be carried at a statutory requirement under Article 3, Carriage of Goods by Sea Act 1971, which states, okay, next is after receiving the goods into the charge and carrier of the or the master or the agent on demand of the shipper, issue the shipper a bill of lading showing among the other things. So what are the other things now? So a leading mark necessary for identification of goods as same as are furnished in writing. Now by the shipper before the loading of such goods starts, provided such as marks are stamped or otherwise shown clearly upon goods if uncovered, or the cases or the coverings which such goods are contained in such a manner as should ordinarily remain legible until the end of the voyage. Because once when something has been written, when stamped and sealed, and if it is written in a pen which is ink pen, and in the voyage if water comes and is not legible, you're not able to read anything what is written, then what point you call it a bill of lading? You will have no details in it, right? So it shouldn't be in such manner. It has to be clear until the voyage is complete. Okay. So either the number of package or pieces or the quantity or the weight as the case may be furnished in writing by the shipper. All this has been mentioned. Apparent order or condition of the goods provided that no carrier, master or an agent of the carrier shall be bound to state or show in the bill of lading any marks, number, quantity, weight which has reasonable ground for suspecting not accurately representing the goods actually received or which he has no responsible means of checking. Okay. Next is the shipper shall be deemed to have guaranteed to the carrier the accuracy at the time of shipment of marks, number, quantity, weight, okay, as furnished by him. The shipper shall indemnify the carrier against all loss, damages, and expenses arising or resulting from inaccuracies in such particulars. Okay? The right of carrier to such indemnity shall is no way limit has responsibility and liability under contract of carriage to any other person than the shipper. Clause of charter party. So what is clause of charter party? So some of the common clause in a charter party or contract of the assignment which is of relative importance include ready to load. Okay. The charter party contains a statement to possession of the ship, and such a statement in certain circumstances becomes a condition of contract, and any breach of same would entitle the charterer to repudiate the contract. So he can cancel the contract if it is not followed. Fit for voyage. So the charter party is usually provided that the ship shall be tight, energetic, strong. Okay, we have seaworthiness. Remember, we studied that in last session. So the ship has to be strong enough to carry the goods, whatever is being allocated. The same as it as a seaworthiness and not conditioned, and the charterers will not be entitled to repudiate the charter party if the ship provided is inadequate and operated by competent staff. Okay, full and complete voyage. You can't keep anything in half distance and say no, I won't be able to complete. Okay, it means that the charter undertakes to supply the agreed cargo, least the ship owner may suffer the loss of freight. Okay, now act of God. this is what happens now. So act of God prevails at sea, and kings of or resistance of princes. Okay, now this clause is that if at all there is any issues or any act of God, what we call as heavy rain or something happens. Okay, so such prevails on which is unexpectedly happening because of natural calamities. Okay, so what happens is perils at sea could be exceptional clause relating to perils of the sea may be included where goods lost at its account would not make a ship owner liable. Okay, perils of sea shall no cover every act and casualty and natural inevitable acts of the winds or waves, which may be described as wear and tear. Okay, so there is something of frustration of the charter party. So frustration in a maritime adventure would mean that both the parties of the charter party from offering the subject matter of the contract that may be in fact would cease to be available to the parties. Now the charter party, the charter who nominated only a safe port for discharge and expenses of discharge would depend upon the terms of the contract. Okay, so if the charter nominated are unsafe port, he will be liable of any damage to the ship arising proximately from the coast. So the charterer may be directed to bear all the consequent damages for said breach. Okay, so here this is a charterer frustration of charterer. So now unseaworthiness. So what is seaworthiness? That the ship is fit enough to do its journey upon in the sea. That certificate is seaworthiness certificate. Okay, it's equipped and it's in a good condition. So what is unseaworthiness? Okay, unseaworthiness is when the ship is not in a good condition, which is a damaged, which has a lot of issues in it, which may not be sailed properly. Okay, that is unseaworthy. So let's see. There was a Abbey's reader, EB Abbey's reader versus Union of India case. Okay, the use number 2, 1971. This is in your syllabus. So here what happened? The vessel was chartered from Portland on the west coast of United States to Bombay. Okay, so while on its leg off Oklahoma, the vessel came to inglorious halt and had to be sent for towing. The ship owners claimed general average loss contributing that cargo owners for expenditure and time loss for towing the excess. Okay, but however, the said claim of ship owners was rejected as the vessel coming to an halt was directly traced to its unseaworthiness, okay, or lack of negligence in making the sufficiently fit to last the distance. The trial court finding it follows that in my judgment the vessel was okay that the court trial finding was that it follows that in my judgment the vessel was unseaworthy at the beginning itself, okay, of the voyage, either because she had insufficient bunkers or because they were of wrong quality or both reasons. This unseaworthiness was the cause of the casualty. Further, risk have avoided if the owners had exercised due diligence to make the vessel seaworthy. So the contribution in general average is therefore irrecoverable from defendant and claim fails. So the general average we will study. That word is important. We will study in next slide. So this was the judgment by the court. Okay. So the said findings was upheld in the appellate from the judge had been through all circumstances and the facts that it seems to me that his judgment cannot be faulted. His decision on the facts of this case after hearing all evidence and considering it most carefully. Okay, so seaworthiness is something very important. If you send some which is not a very worthy ship, which can sink in the half distance, and if you send such kind of ships to your country, then you will have to face the consequences. Okay, so we heard this word called freight forwarders. Now let's discuss what is freight forwarders and who are these people. Okay, so with advent of modernization the and development in shipping trade, the concept of this freight forwarders has been evolved. Okay, so the containerization is evolved, which is contributed to growth of the industry. So the containerization is keeping more and consolidated, and the shipping operators are depending on the same for their day-to-day running of the business. Okay? The increase in the capacity demands for carriage added with changing operational environment has brought the whole system into a containerization zone to provide a competitive more or effective and efficient service. Okay, because it's like a consolidated mode. So apart from carrying bulk and great bulk, which are usually moved in vessels or and carried in small for delivery, the containers are used to carrying all kinds of cargo, including general, features, liquid, etc. Okay. As regards general cargo, containers are classified as full containers and less container load. Okay, based on the quantity of cargo shipped, a container is considered as unit load, and if the shipping operator or the owner is not able to obtain a full container cargo, he relies on a consolidation of the same either by himself or through a freight forwarders. So that is where freight forwarders come into picture because he is a consolidated. So the freight forwarders are non-vessel operating carriers who are not actually carriers. Okay, you must understand the difference. They are not actually carrier. Okay, but in the real sense of them, in term, they enter into the first contract with the shipper undertaking to carry their consignment, and in turn consolidate and hand over sealed container with the cargo to line operators and feeder operators for exportation and importation. Okay. So freight forwarders issue only BL and for transportation, conveying from contract and affirmment, and at the same is referred as house of bill or the house of bill of lading, which is negotiable document and complies with the all functions of bill of lading. The delivery of cargo without surrender of this negotiable bill of lading by carriers at the depot uh, would amount to gross violation of national and international laws relating to the carriage of goods, costs, or breach of such contract liable value costs, and also challenges the misrepresents of certain countries like USA and UK. In the general law of contract, the entered into a carriage of goods, a trade carrier, multi-modal operator, and issue documents of carriage, which bound him under various acts of provisions of law. So next is multi-modal operator or multi-modal transporters. So we will take a small break now of 5 minutes and then we will join again. So meantime, I want you to all go and find out the freight forwarding companies, and after the 5 minutes break, if you can tell me what are the freight forwarding companies, few names, if you can give me 1, 2, 3 names of freight forwarding company. I want you to just go and search the names and let me know after the break. Okay, so we will join the class at exactly 3. No, no, not 3. No, it's 2:50. We'll come back at 2:55. Okay. Okay, hello. I hope everybody is back now after the break. So, can anybody give me the example of freight forwarding companies? Is anybody there? Anybody active? You can unmute and speak now.
Sir, DHL Blue Dot.
DHL Blue Dot. Yes, very good. Anybody else want to say any other freight forwarding company? Okay, fine. So DHL Blue Dart are all flight forwarding companies only. You are right, and they also act as a multi-modal transport companies also. Okay, so now let's see what is multi-modal transport or what is multi-modal operator. Okay, so a multi-modal operator is a that what is multimodal transport we will learn. Okay, then we will get into the operator. Okay, this transport is also known as a combined transport. Okay, here the transportation of goods is under a single contract, only one contract, but performed as a, with at least two different modes of transport. It can be sea, it can be road, it can be air. Okay, there will be two different types of mode of transport, but the contract is only one. And this company, multimodal transport company, will handle everything from door to door, from this point to that point. This one particular company will have only one contract and they'll take care of everything. It can be multiple what you say transportation will be there, but they will handle it and they are liable of it legally also. Okay, that is the multimodal transport operator. Okay, so now let's see. The multimodal operator is issuing a transport contract. Is a carrier who is a person engaged in a business of transporting or hiring goods, a rail, road, inland water, okay, sea. And the mode of transport shall include only such carriage involving road, rail, or road, water, inland. Okay. Now, this multimodal transportation means a carry of means or mode of transport from acceptance of goods in India to a place of delivery of goods outside India. Okay, so multimodal transport is that contract which has entered into between the consignor who wishes to export his cargo and multimodal operator for such a transportation. Okay, so a multimodal transport operator is a person who concludes the multimodal transport contract. So on his own behalf or another person acting on his behalf. So he shall act as a principal and not as an agent, even if the consignor or carrier participating in multimodal transportation and assumes responsibility for the performance of the said contract. Okay. So, who is multimodal transport? Okay, transport operator, and how do they differ from a freight forwarder? Okay. So, before we go to the question, let's discuss what is a multimodal transport. We already explained it. So, as the name may indicate, it is a method of transportation of goods from point A to B using multiple modes. It can be water, rail, as you said, sea, anything. So, when the multimodal transport, so who then is the multimodal transporter? So based on above definition, we can say that that current scenario, the below entities may be termed as a multimodal transport operator. So let's see this. Now shipping lanes, because under the carriage house, they can undertake rail, they can do road modes of transport either via their own infrastructure or via third party. Now, freight forwarders, who, because in a lot of cases, especially where they issue house bills, okay, they are taking on the role of carrier and as such may be, and in a lot of cases do offer rail and road and sea mode of transport either via their own infrastructure or via third party. Okay, there is NVOCC operators, because in most cases this NVOCC operators perform undertakes the service of shipping line contracts, a combined forwarder combined along with the risks responsibility that comes with performing such services. This could conclude that, but not restricted to offering rail and road and sea modes, either via their own infrastructure via third party. Okay. In short, an entity that signs a multi-modal contract assumes the responsibility for the same and issues the multi-modal transport document for the merchant. Okay. So this multi-modal, the model for this, And documents, what are the standard documents and conditions for it? So following Multimodal Transportation of Goods Act 1993, the component authority, namely Director General of Shipping, okay, DGS, with the approval of Government of India, has issued an order on 17th March 1994 prescribing a model of multi-modal transport document, MTD, which is known as MTD. The document has been prepared for carrying out the provisions of Act, keeping in view primary object of legislation that carries are there and to serve trade and not vice versa. The full text of Act and order mentioned above are reproduced in Annexure 1 to this chapter, which is given in your syllabus. This may be referred for a detailed information. Okay, if any of you can go to this Annexure 1 and 2. Okay, however, important features contains the standard conditions of MTD are highlighted in the next. So we can go through the standard MTD or this thing. It's a lengthy process. So here in this unit, we have basically sought the established importance of bill of lading. Okay, what is bill of lading? What is the features of bill of lading, and what is the uses of it? Why is it being used? And in the bill of lading, what is the information it includes, and how important it is, and what are the clauses of which is being used in bill of lading. All this were discussed. Okay, and the carriage of goods in international business, how does that happen, is being discussed. So we have also highlighted salient features of bill of lading. We have addressed the various type of bill of lading. Okay, and we have brought the functioning of freight forwarders, how do they work. Okay, and what is multimodal transportation. And finally, we have concluded saying multimodal transport operators are prevailing act providing a legal framework for multimodal transport in India. So that annexures we will have to go through. That is in your syllabus. Okay. So that concludes the subject of bill of lading. So next and the last unit is Admiralty law. Okay. So Admiralty law, in this subject, we will learn the meaning and importance of Admiralty law. Okay, and how the general rule paved the way to insurance coverage for the three different aspects such as ship, freight, and cargo. Okay, and it will describe the what is salvage. Okay, and types of salvage assistance we can observe. Okay, and then we will discuss on different type of dispute resolution. How can we resolve a dispute, and we will also discuss law relating to environmental pollution. So all this is compiled in this unit of Admiralty law. Okay, salvage we discussed earlier also. As I said, we will discuss more in the on the coming slides. General rule, general average rule also we will discuss in this subject on the next slides. Okay. So, what is Admiralty law? Okay. Admiralty law or maritime law is a body of law that governs nautical issues and private maritime disputes. The Admiralty law consists of both domestic law on maritime activities and private international law governing the relationship between the private parties operating or using the ocean going ships. Okay. So maritime law is also a body of laws. Okay, it is a conventions and the treaties that govern private maritime business and other nautical matters, such as shipping or offences occurring on open water, international rules governing the use of oceans and seas are all known as the law of the sea. So this is basically the law of sea is is also called as Admiralty law. So now let's see what is law of general average. Huh? The law of general average is a principle of maritime law whereby all stakeholders in the sea venture proportionally share any loss resulting from the voluntarily sacrifice of part of the ship or cargo to save the whole in an emergency. Okay. So when you listen to this term of law of general average itself, we can make out it is basically getting a average Average means what? It is neither going to, average is a middle point. It is not going that side or not going this side. It is something which is lying in between of both the parties. That is what law of general average in shipping business mean also. When there is an emergency, when there is a loss occurring, so who will bear the loss? Who will take the loss? Okay, that is decided using law of general average. So let's imagine a ship of full cargo on its voyage, and sometime untowed happens during the voyage, okay, such as there may be fire, okay, maybe because they are carrying some hazardous things with the, incorrect cargo declaration, or the ship gets stranded or grounded due to machinery breakdowns, okay, or maybe a stack or collapse on board, or container ship maybe due to misdeclaration of container weights, okay, or the ship gets caught in heavy weather and some cargo on board the ship has shifted due to the heavy weather and jeopardizing the stability of the ship. All this can happen when your journey is there, and or any other life threatening situation caused by natural or unnatural circumstances, okay. So in such cases, when entire voyage or cargo or ship is said to be at risk, the master of the ship, okay, or the ship owner has moral obligation to take a decision with regards to preserving the safety of the ship, the cargo, and most importantly, the crew. Okay, it is the master's responsibility, ship owner's responsibility to protect everybody when such things happen. Okay, so this may necessitate the master to do something extraordinary in order to save the ship, the cargo, and the crew. This extraordinary event may involve jetlizing some cargo, okay, or could be the cargo that is affecting the stability of the ship in bad weather, as mentioned earlier, or to reduce the weight on board of the ship to attempt to refloat or ground of a grounded ship, okay. This ship, the ship making a distress call at the nearest port to salvage the situation on board of the ship, they need to do some emergency repairs to the ship due to which the some cargo may be damaged. Okay, so in such cases where the ship or cargo has undergone any loss, to save the voyage, the ship owner may declare general average. Hope it is clear. Now, if you look at the picture, also you can see the ship has hit somewhere. Now, to start there. Now, to for it to get it back to normal condition, the ship owner has to declare general average. If you can go and see, read the latest news of Suez Canal, what happened later after once they got stuck there. If you can go and read some articles about it, you will get an idea of general average. So who is to be blamed? Why is it to be blamed? And who is giving compensation? All these things you can find. So the general average is legal principle of maritime law under which all parties who are involved in that voyage shall be asked to proportionally share the losses resulting from such activity. All parties, including merchants whose cargo landed safely, would also be called upon to contribute a portion based upon the share or percentage to the affected parties, which could be the ship owner, merchant, or merchants whose goods were jeopardized or damaged in the process of preserving the whole ship or the crew. So, if you take an example, the ship is a container ship and there are 100 containers on board, okay, with 100 customers. Uh, One of the containers caught fire on board, which spread to 9 other containers. And all 10 containers had to be thrown overboard in order to save the balance 90 containers. Hmm. Now the ship and the crew, since the ship, the crew, the cargo and the crew were saved due to this action, the whole burden of the loss will be shared among the 100 customers. Okay, and not just 10 customers whose cargo will be thrown overboard. So here you can understand, as I said, it is giving you a mean value because average value, neither pushing the ship owner into a big loss, neither pushing the customers into a big loss. So it is giving a mean solution for both the parties. That is general law of average. Now let's see what is salvage. So we have come through this topic earlier also. Let's see what is salvage. Salvage signifies either the service rendered by a salver or reward payable to him for his service. Salvage service means that service which saves or contributes to ultimate safety belonging to a vessel. When any danger at sea or any delay on the shore of the sea or tidal water provided, that the service is rendered voluntarily and not performed by any of legal or official duty or merely in interest of self preservation. Okay, so salvage meaning is that it is the service rendered by a salver. Okay, it's a rescue team which comes to help the disabled ship. Okay, so that is something called salvage. So person who comes accompanies to enter the remuneration called salvage reward. So whoever is eligible to do this work and take the reward is called salvage reward. Somebody is coming to save the disabled ship, and how do you pay him? That is called the salvage reward. The essence of salvage service is to render service to the probability of life which is in danger. So he's coming. So it's a legal entitlement to a salvage reward. So this arises when a person acting as a volunteer, that is without any pre-existing legal duty, preserves or contributes so to preserving at a sea vessel cargo, freight, or recognized subject as of salvage from danger. Okay, see somebody who is coming without any liability. There is no predetermined agreement. Okay, because there is a danger. Okay, and he is coming and helping. Okay, the general rule is that all those who render personal service in performance of salvage service are entitled to be a salvage reward. The owner, the charterer, and the crew of salvage vessel are disqualified from claiming a salvage reward when a pilot is called upon in any emergency to perform service outside his duty. Services so rendered to a ship would be treated as that of salvage. A passenger who remains on board of the vessel is in danger of being bound by a moral duty as well as an interest in self-preservation of work for safety of the vessel. He is not entitled to claim as a salver in Mavimac 1868, 1880, 92 Act. So soldiers of the troops ships prevented the ship from sinking by organized effort. Okay, but the receiver of the wreck may claim a salvage in respect of the service rendered by him, provided his service fall outside his described duties. Bond men merely assisting launching boat are entitled to salvage reward. So if you see this small black ship which is coming near to it, the big ship which is being this thing, small boat, this is a salvage service. So salvage is a service rendered by a person who saves or helps to save any maritime property in danger. Salvage must be considered from three legal aspects. There is one is the common law aspect, the statutory aspect, the constructural aspect, and there is a practical seamanship aspect to all the salvage operations. So evidence and record keeping in various salvage situations. It is very important to record things. It is very important to write down and note the things in salvage situations because you tend to miss things which can lose a lot of evidence later on. To recollect that is very difficult. So the most important area of loss of prevention after salvage agreement has been signed in relation to keeping of evidence. The importance of record keeping accurately of the work undertaken by salvers and the assistance given by the masters and crew are usually recorded. Disable the ship at sea, ship aground, pollution, fire and explosion are all the points. So what is voluntariness? Okay. The requirement that the service must be given voluntarily does not predict the salary. That is, one who performs the service from making the service the subject of an agreement, and this in practice is often done. Okay. See Lloyd's standard form of salvage agreement in appendix to this chapter, which is in your syllabus. Okay. So to avoid the requirement of voluntariness and thus defeat a claim of for salvage, it must be shown beyond doubt that there existed a duty to render the service wholly and completely. And secondly, that duty was owed to the owners of the property saved. So example, if you take pilot on board or the crew of the ship is in distress are usually unable to claim service unless the service rendered are outside or beyond the scope of and bounds of their duties under the contract. So it may happen, and indeed has happened, that a pilot contracted to perform a pilotage service has acted over and above the call of duty and voluntarily to extend the of bringing his actions within reclaim of salvage service independently of his contractual duties as a pilot. Okay. So the salvage services must be successful if only partially. Okay. So the requirement that service must be successful can be summed up in this often used expression: no cure, no pay. Okay. Success need not, however, be total. Partial success, however small, that is to say provided there is some measure of preservation to the owners, is sufficient. So arising out this concept is allied rule that salvage can certain circumstances still be payable where the service is to be rewarded and has not actually contributed to the final savings of the property. Say, for example, where another vessel answers a distress call or assistance, but her efforts to produce no success and indeed worsen the situation because perhaps the two ships come into collision through the fault of the salving vessel. This itself may cause the salver's claim to fail, but if that fault has not occurred, the court may admit that the owners of the salving ship would have been entitled to an award. Okay, so this is very clear saying that no cure, no pay. You are calling somebody for help, and when that vessel instead of helping you is giving you a trouble by colliding, then how can you go and claim for salvage? You cannot give a salvage reward, correct? So that is all. Salvage service must be successful if only partially. What is a salvage's ability to limit liability? Yeah. So the potential exposure of a professional, of a salver to unlimited liability was vividly underlined by the decision of House of Lords in Toju Maru case. Okay, that is discussed in your syllabus. Can you go through it? The restrictions placed upon the right to limit under the Merchant Shipping Liability Ship Owners and Others Act 1958, the requirement of that and the act neglect of default must be the course of the navigation or management of the ship left sailors in situations similar to the Tojumaru salvation operation, power is to limit liability after negligence resulting in damage or loss. Frequently, there is no shipper belonging to the salvors even near the scene of the salvage operation. This exposure to full legal liability caused much worry to sailors, whether professional or amateur, during the 1970s. But introduction of Merchant Shipping Act 1979 has come to their rescue. So, now what are the insurance aspects on this? So, when we look at the insurance option, turning now to the insurance aspects, the treatment of salvage charges. Okay, reference must be made to Section 65 Marine Insurance Act 1906, which provides, subject to any express provision in the policy, salvage charges incurred in preventing any loss or perils issued against it may be recovered as loss by those claims. Salvage charges, okay, means the charges are recoverable under maritime law by a salvor independently of contract. They do not include expenses of service in nature, of salvage rendered by the assured or his agents, or any person employed for hire by them. The purpose of averting a peril insured against such expenses where properly incurred may be recovered as particular charges or general average loss according to the circumstance under which they were incurred. The salvage charges incurred in preventing a loss by insured perils may be recoverable from underwriters under the Act without there being any specific inclusion in the policy. So there is, however, express coverage under clause 11, Institute Time Clauses Clause 110A 1983. The categorization of various types of charges on underwriters may seem unnecessarily complicated. But the distinction between the salvage, sue, and labor and general average is logical one. So, what is life salvage? So, life salvage, or as the International Convention on Salvage 1989 more accurately calls it, salvage of persons. It is dealt with Article 16 of the Convention in the same way as in 1910 Brussels Convention. The jurisdiction of court in salvage cases is founded upon a proceeding against the property which has been saved, and I am at loss to conceive upon what principles and owners can answerable for the mere saving of life. So next is arbitration is preferred to state court litigation for the following reasons. So, what are the arbitrations is preferred to state court litigations for the following reasons. Now, finality. What is finality? Moral attributes are no subject to appeal and are final and binding. Okay? The international recognition through various international conventions like 1958 New York Convention are all international recognition. Next is neutrality. The parties can place themselves on an equal footing with regard to the place of attribution in a neutral country. The languages used, the procedures, rules, or the nationalities, legal representation, it's all part of neutral. Next is the specialized competence and personal follow-up. Parties may select highly specialized attributes of their choice depending upon nature of dispute. Attributes follow the case of from first till the last and not delegated substitute. There is flexibility also. The most admiral rules followed for flexibility in defining the arbitral procedures, hearings, time frame, location of hearing, location of arbitrators, and meeting, etc. Provisional measures. Before the attribute tribunals in place, there can be a relief obtained through courts. Okay, for time being, an interim relief can be obtained. Parties in most jurisdictions obtain court orders even when arbitration commences, staying the offending conduct, and sometimes the arbitration tribunal also empowered to do so. Witness. So no power is given to arbitrator to force parties to appear as witness in a proceeding. So any forcible witness cannot be accepted. Speed. The arbitration is faster and quicker than litigation and is in the hands of the parties. Parties, it is completely liable in the hands of parties. Confidentiality. The arbitration hearing are not public and only the parties receive the copies of award, which is great advantage where trade secrets and inventions are at stake. So the confidentiality of arbitration is gone and public cannot have access of the award which has been given here. Okay, and costs. So arbitrators and fees, travel and accommodation, and administrative costs of arbitral tribunal are borne by the parties equally in advance. The various modes of settlement of disputes and litigation, the arbitration, mediation, and negotiation, and other means, the litigation has fixed procedures where substantive law is also taken into account before case is decided in the court of law. Subject to jurisdiction, written and expressed contract entered into between the two parties, applicable law is applied and the judgments are passed by appropriate court of law which have a binding feature on the parties. So there a procedure for statutory appeal revision depending upon the forms and specific legislative acts and rules relating to procedure are framed and applied. Now let's see law related to environmental pollution. So environmental pollution as far as ships are concerned can take any of the following forms. Okay. The below forms are those which can take environmental pollution as concerned steps. Okay. So discharge overboard of galley or waste and washing down the ship's decks. This can be a form of environmental pollution. You know, spillage of oil as a result of overflowing tanks during loading, discharging, and transmitting liquid cargoes or during banking operations. This is also environmental hazard. Okay, leakage of oil or their other substances from vessels or machineries or equipment that is leaking stem gland or during the ballasting operations. All this can affect the environment also. The leakage of cargoes, either dry or liquid, as a result of damaged packages or containers during loading, discharging, or carriages on deck, can also be an environmental pollution. See, there is you may carry a lot of items, so noxious fumes or vapors emanating from cargoes as a result of damaged packing in containers is also cause of environmental pollution. It can cause damage to the sea life. It can cause air pollution also because of all such activities. Air pollution caused by fuel gases or heavy smoke is again a law related to a violation of law related to environmental pollution. Next is dumping. The two earliest conventions relating to dumping are Global London Dumping Convention 1972 and Regional Oslo Dumping Convention 1972, on the basis of which many other conventions generated subsequently. In addition to oil installation renewal, monitoring contingency plans, installation of the sea of also require attention. The Helsinki Convention was formed in 1974 to control marine pollution in Baltic Sea, Gulf of Bothnia, and Gulf of Finland. Now, role of protection and indemnity clubs in pollution liability cases. Standard insurance policies should specifically to cover the liability of ship owners and carriers rather than additional clauses. To all insurance policies have been included marine insurance policy covering the ship owner's liability with the exception of fishing vessel and yachts. Marine insurance policy covering the fishing vessel owner's liability. Marine insurance policy covering the carrier's liability. Then another insurance is marine insurance policy covering the charter's liability other than bareboat charter. So this policy seeks to provide as broad a scope of a cover as a possibility. In fact, cover they offer includes claims of personal injury, physical damage against the vessel, either by coordinating parties or third parties following by any occurrences. Now let's see what is the population pollution risk. So the marine insurance policy covering the ship owner's liability of ocean-going vessel covers any damage, loss, or harm caused by pollution resulting from oil spills. Now, under this policy, French insurance covers the liability attributable to owner of the oil tanker involved in the spill. In addition, special coverage can be provided to satisfy the particular needs of certain assurance are also usually provided by insurance company like offshore, inland water rigs, etc. So, in the Admiralty law, we have come across or learned the importance of insurance coverage, the different type of aspects or such ships and freight forward cargo which is exposed to risk. How is the disabled ship being removed using salvage, and what kind of duties do the salvage occur? What is salvage rewards? And what are the rules and insurance policies which the ship has to undergo? We have also highlighted the terms of alternate methods when there is a dispute, general law, what is average general law when there is an accident or a mishap happening in a ship, then what is general average law? We discussed about that. What are the alternate methods of dispute resolution? Okay, that is discussed. And we have also dealt with environmental pollution. What is the various legislations involved in it? And all these topics we have covered in Admiralty law. And by this, we have completed the last 2 units of the subject. Now, if you have any doubts, you can ask on this subject. I would share the notes with you once the session is end. So if you have any doubts to be asked, you can ask, or you can contact your mentor. So hereby I conclude the class. Thank you very much.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.